As comparative law became a fully fledged discipline, it also became more self-reflective, increasingly interested in matters of epistemology and methodology. Consequently, we're dealing today with a growing number of writings that raise the question of what comparative law is and how comparative law should be practiced. I shall retain here three such identity labels: comparative law as global research, comparative law as cross-cultural research, and comparative law as interdisciplinary practice, with a view to exploring the relationship between the former and the latter. Ever since comparative law was established institutionally around the beginning of the 20th century, its promoters have advocated for a global reach, so much so that already in the 1950s an important number of jurists were involved in a large-scale project whose declared ambition was to cover almost all legal systems of the world. With the globalization of law, these goals were only reinforced. Thus, today, numerous comparatists engage in collective research that is generally meant to uncover a presupposed common core of legal systems. Comparative law as cross-cultural practice is a relatively new idea in the field. Traditionally, comparatists believed in the scientific character of law, and though they were willing to admit that law is somehow always connected to a particular national culture, they nonetheless prefer to emphasize the technical aspect of law, inferring from it that the enterprise of comparison cannot raise serious challenges because the comparatist can cut himself or herself loose from his or her culture and objectively compare what would only amount to strictly technical rules. A number of comparatists, who still occupy today a marginal position in the discipline, have argued that this understanding of comparative law is rudimentary, since it does not account for the cultural dimension of any given law. These comparatists have theorized on the implications of comparing across legal cultures, ultimately concluding that comparison is much more complex than mainstream comparatists presented it, precisely because cultures are incommensurable and do not allow for neutral measurements. From the comparative law as cross-cultural practice narrative flows the comparative law as interdisciplinary practice advocate. If law is culture, then it cannot be explained in isolation from sociology, economics, history, philosophy, and so on and so forth. However, orthodox comparatists were very reluctant to accept this idea, and the majority of them, surprisingly enough, still are. While I defend the merits of interdisciplinarity in comparative law against the mainstream paradigm, I also think we should be aware of its limits too. Legal origins, a very influential theory, informs us not only on the pitfalls of interdisciplinary thinking in general, but also on the tension that exists between comparative law as global research on the one hand and comparative law as cross-cultural and interdisciplinary practice on the other hand. Briefly put, legal origins combines discourses from law, economics, and history to maintain that a particular legal tradition, namely the common law, triggers better economic outcomes than the civil law. These studies rely significantly on quantitative methods. More than 140 legal systems are being coded and then introduced in a type of statistical operation called a regression analysis that is expected to return a correlation between the legal field that has been measured and economic development. On closer scrutiny, however, this theory shows how the global dimension of comparative law, understood as big data and comparison by numbers, undermines the commitment to a meaningful interdisciplinary analysis. This large N study approach does not allow for a deep reflection on the content of different laws. Moreover, it encourages its proponents to confirm their disciplinary prejudices by choosing from the theories on comparative law only those that suit their quantitative purposes. Now, if we are to stick to the interdisciplinary requirement as we think we should, then it is our idea of global research that we need to revise so as to better accommodate the cultural character of law. I argue that the global needs not be tantamount to all countries of the world analysis. quantification and big collaborative projects. Inasmuch as it confronts different legal systems, comparative law, even when it is practiced by a researcher alone who is examining no more than two legal systems, is already global or globally relevant, for it refuses the national confinement that has been traditionally obtained in the discipline of law, and thus makes room for other cognitive and epistemological frames of reference. It is our mission as comparatives to continuously reinvent the global ethos while maintaining a serious interdisciplinary practice. In any case, numeric comparative law of the kind practiced today does not seem to me the proper way forward.